Previously on Cross-Gen Gaming.
Most recently, the original voice actress for Bayonetta seems to have fibbed a little bit. On October 15th, Helena Taylor tweeted a series of videos explaining her reasons for not returning to voice Bayonetta. In the videos, a clearly distraught Helena explains that she was only offered $4,000 to reprise the role, while the franchise itself has made over $450 million. That's not actually accurate. We'll get into that a little bit later, but that's what she said.
But there's a twist.
A twist?
Bloomberg's Jason Schreier published an article debunking Helena's claim. At the end of this, Helena would have ended up with between $15,000 to $20,000 for the game. That's a bit different than $4,000.
So Dylan, last week we kind of gave an overview of the whole Helena Taylor v Platinum Games drama, but we didn't really get into the aftermath, what kind of happened after all of the information came out. Specifically, the discussion about fair compensation within the games industry and all of the weird nuanced conversations that Twitter's really bad at having, but they try to anyway.
They try. They do try.
Woof. So let's just start with the first things first. What was your initial reaction to, Helena Taylor's videos?
I mean, at first when I had initially saw it, it was just it was an all too familiar, disappointing feeling. As I mentioned last week, I'm in the voice acting circles. I really like voice acting. I think it's very fun and interesting. So I've heard of this situation for so long and for so often, and it sucks. So at first I was like, "Ugh, come on, not again." And it just sucked.
Yeah, this is not an uncommon thing, really. I mean,
No.
There's also been discussions, about how much the developers get paid versus, what executives get paid and all. There's just so many layers of who's getting paid to make arguably, not even arguably, the most valuable pieces of media on the planet. When you have these things and, they're growing the way that they are, there's obviously more money involved, and unfortunately, I'm with you. My first reaction was, well, sounds about right. Of course they would do that.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. Sounds about right. It sucks.
It's even more unfortunate because, it is a developer that I generally trust. Not necessarily Hideki Kamiya, but Platinum Games really knows what they're doing, and I've rarely played a game from them that I've been like, wow, that was really bad.
That was another funny, I'll say, little wrinkle is just Hideki's whole reaction to all of it, and just him going on a whole tirade. I mean, to be fair, he was right, but it definitely didn't help the whole situation of him just kind of going off the whole time.
That's what he does.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
I don't think that you're very aware of him, past this point, but I've been following him since Clover days, back when he helped make Okami, and he is one of those personalities that he's not afraid to basically make fun of you on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just directly.
That's what I've heard.
Sometimes it's not super chill though. Unfortunately, he kind of moves sometimes into the whole Phil Fish territory, which is he will just say the most absolutely absurd things and then wonder why people don't like him. You're like, okay.
I see. Yeah, that whole thing was an interesting little topping to this whole crazy mess.
Yeah, but now that we know everything, now how do you feel about stuff?
Oh,
that's the thing. Is initially I was like, I think somebody asked me on stream, they're like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm like, I don't know this. I think my first reaction, my very first reaction was, oh, that sucks. The more I thought about it, I'm like, that doesn't actually make any sense. I don't understand why they would do that. And so I started thinking about it, and someone asked me on stream, and I was like, I don't know if that's actually going to end up being exactly what happened. I feel like they probably offered her more money. Turns out, yeah, they did.
I mean, in all honesty, I believed it. I was, like you said, when it was the sounds about right thing for me, where I'm just like, yeah. And to be fair, I don't know Platinum that well. I don't know that much about them. So to me, it was just oh, hey, another company is just ripping off some voice actors. Great, cool, awesome. Right. But yeah, and then the truth came out. and I've gone from I've gone from sad and disappointed to just pissed off, man. Like,
Dylan's so mad about this, y'all.
He's so annoying.
Mad.
Because literally, like, the problem is, the real problem for me is this is actually something that, like, happens, and this is, I think, like, an honest problem with voice acting and how that's all treated. And for her to use that as, like, some sort of crutch to essentially, from what it seems like, get back at the people who didn't want to pay her an absorbent amount of money. Like, just, I hate that. Get over yourself. That honestly angers me to no end. Like, I do not blame Platinum Games for being like, all right, we'll just get someone else, because that is ridiculous. And as we had also mentioned, Bayonetta is big in, like, the smaller scheme of gamers, but it's not that big. It is niche. It's not that big. So they can't, it's a hard pull for anything, but especially not Bayonetta. For you, it is hard to shelve out 6 figures on top of residuals. It's just ridiculous.
But again, that kind of leads into the whole question of how much are these games making, and should voice actors be receiving more because they are kind of, establishing the characters for this franchise? Because, the alternative is they can just do we'll get what's good enough, and then you have Resident Evil 1 voice acting, which is trash. That kind of does speak to the point, though, of, like, we've gone from, they grabbed the, 6 or 7 people that they could find and did the voice acting, and it was good enough, to now we have people who are actually trained actors doing this stuff. So, but that does raise a question, like, should they be getting, residuals? We mentioned in the episode that there was that whole, like, Screen Actors Guild strike, and the main issue was that they wanted to, the voice actors wanted to receive residuals for doing stuff in games, which I think is, I don't know. I don't honestly know. It's tough.
I will say, at the baseline, I do think voice actors should be paid more and should be more valued, as we said. I think at the baseline, that should be the case, because they really just get paid zip, zilch, nada. Like, if you, to put into perspective, for a voice actor, like a pretty common voice actor, if you're not going to cons fairly often, you are not getting paid well, because you have to go to those cons to sell your merchandise and stuff, and, like, get signatures and take photos and all that, to get some of that money so you can have a semi-decent living wage. That's not okay in my eyes. I don't think you should have to do that much stuff just so you can have a good paying job. I think that's way too far. And a good point you also said, where we're way past the point of, it's just like, hey Jim, you record some lines. We're way past that. We are with, like, actual actors that are auditioning and giving it their all. We have ascended past that, and I think we kind of have to in some way reflect that in the payment. But on top of all that, I do agree, it's complicated. I don't think it's a simple answer of, like, yeah, just give them residuals, or yeah, just pay them this much more. And I really just can't speak to that completely, because I'm not in that deep of the weeds. I've never personally done any of that, but it's a complicated answer. But I think at the very base, yes, they should get paid more or be valued more at the very least.
But then but again, I'm gonna keep asking devil's advocate questions.
Yeah, here. I get it.
I agree with you. I do think that typically voice actors should get paid more, just because, seeing some of the stuff that they get paid, I'm just like, that's insane. Like,
yep.
The amount of money that, Nolan North got paid to do Uncharted 2 is sad. It's sad, because that is one of the best games of all time. But at the same time, he's not necessarily putting in the same amount of time that a big Hollywood actor is, because he doesn't have to be on screen necessarily, unless he's doing voice, some sort of motion capture. And even the majority of the game is not motion capture. He's just doing voices. So is that the same amount of work? Some would say yes. Some would say no. I can't speak to it. I'm not a voice actor. I'm not going to even try. But it's at least a question that needs to be asked.
It is a good point. I think Yeah, it's a hard question. I would probably just say I think where we're at now is like a pretty like a bottom line, and the sort of higher end of like a high paying Hollywood actor. I think there is a good middle ground there that I just don't think it's at right now. I don't inherently think it needs to be at the level of Hollywood actor, because there are some significant differences there, but it should not be as low as it is.
So then the question becomes, what is good enough, right?
Yeah, and that one I can't answer.
As we have seen with Bayonetta 3, changing out the actor hasn't really changed the effect of the game as much. And I wonder if they had gone with somebody who is potentially, like, at what point would hiring, just Jim in the back, or, Catherine in the back to voice this character, at what point is it like, oh, actually, wow, they did just fine enough? I mean, a good example of that would be like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Like they got the voice, the actor for that game was in-house and had never done it before, but she like won multiple awards for being actually fantastic, but I'm sure she didn't get paid very well.
Yeah.
So like at what point is like, what is good enough? Is changing out Helena Taylor for Jennifer Hale really going to make the game bad? Probably not.
Probably not. No.
Is Jennifer Hale going to be able to like maybe accept less money because she can get more gigs? Probably. So it's this whole slippery slope thing of at what point, like, what is good enough for a game? Yeah, I would say that like it depends on the game, right? Because like if you got something like Last of Us 2, you can't just get some rando to come in there and act, because like they're just not going to be able to do the nuances that like Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson can actually pull off. But for an over the top character like, Bayonetta, maybe they can. Or maybe they just do even less. Maybe they're just doing like anime grunts. I mean, you and I can do anime grunts.
I can do that all day.
I'll do that all day.
Yeah. There's definitely like a level. There are differences in the type of games.
And I'm not trying to demean anyone's like ability or whatever. And I think that voice acting is, it is one of those things that can significantly transform a game and its performance, or the way it makes you feel. God of War Ragnarok is coming out soon, and I'm sure that they've spent so much time working with the actors to make that as good as possible. But because it is growing so fast, at what point is it just like, well, we kind of have to just get what we can get? It's tough. I don't know. This is why we were saying it's not as clear cut as like, Twitter's over here being like, it's easy, just pay them more. It's like, well, do you? Like this? I mean, does Sonic really need to get paid more money?
I mean,
do you need to pay Big the Cat more money? Really? I don't know.
Again, I think it just heavily depends on like the role, but I do think there's honestly a lot of value to voice actors where I don't know, I understand like the level of work is not the same, but at the same time, it's still, that is the voice of the character. That is a pretty, again, depending on the game, it could be a game that just doesn't even have voice acting, but usually it's a pretty defining trait of the character and something that you help like attribute to that character. And then from there, like the game and its story and all that fun stuff.
But then you still giving it into the whole thing of like, do the majority of gamers even recognize game like actors? I mean, you've got your high profile ones like your Jennifer Hales and your Troy Bakers, your Ashley Johnsons, whatever, but or your Laura Baileys. But past them, like, who voices your favorite character in Call of Duty?
Yeah.
Who voices your favorite character in Apex or Overwatch? Unless you like pay attention and are like hardcore into it, you probably don't know.
Yeah, but even still, you even if you don't necessarily like know the actors or their names or whatever, I think there's still like, you attribute the voice to the character. I think there's an association there.
But to kind of go along with that same concept, Michael Ironside was the voice of Sam Fisher in in Splinter Cell. Yeah, Michael Ironside was Sam Fisher in Silent Hill. All of the zombies and monsters and Pyramid Head got killed from behind with a knife.
It was crazy. They never saw it coming.
It's a reverse horror game. No, but Michael Ironside was the voice of Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell for the longest time, and then they replaced him in Blacklist. And Blacklist didn't really, get a lot of attention because of, it kind of was a deviation from the franchise in some ways. But I recently beat that game, and that game's actually pretty awesome. And if I had not known, I don't think I would have been able to tell, oh, that's not Michael Ironside.
Interesting.
Again, it's that whole thing of like, does it really matter to the way that the game is played, and would it be necessarily better for the voice actor to get paid more, or maybe the developers, or the game director, or the creative visionaries behind the whole game? Again, the problem is there's so many creatives involved in a game. It's not like, it's not like the one actor is like the franchise. It's not, you don't have like the Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, aka the entire X-Men franchise going forward, or your Robert Downey Jr. is the MCU until they get rid of him. Like, you don't have that as much. I think sometimes you do have that, but like, it's just too nuanced. Twitter did a really bad job of handling this, by the way. Twitter was like...
That's how Twitter is. Twitter is not a place for long, interesting discussions, but that is the only place that people have them. So
I still want to go back to... I still want to see Sam Fisher in Silent Hill now. That I think would be really interesting and funny. Just a reverse horror game where like the monsters are actually scared of you.
You're the monster.